Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. The big news this weekend is around the Hearing Protection Act and Short Act provisions that were in the big beautiful bill and then struck down by the parliamentarian. Now the Senate is on a deadline and working through a rare weekend session to hit that deadline, so the information is moving fast. So heads up, this one is going to be a little quick and dirty, especially because Liberty Toddler is behind the camera today and will probably pop out at any moment. So here is the stuff that you need to know. The provisions to gut the NFA are, or were, part of a 940-page bill that was only released a little before midnight on Friday. If you'd followed the way that Congress moves on giant bills before, that is unfortunately pretty standard. At least this time around, folks are getting more than 24 hours to read it. It needs to get through the Senate and head back to the House for a final round of votes before it gets to Trump. Now, the bill would do some good things, like extend the Trump tax cuts. It would also raise the debt ceiling again and add even more to the national debt, once again kicking the can down the road, printing more money, and continuing to devalue the dollar, which will long-term feed inflation and have disastrous consequences. That is bad. Every president does it, and it's part of what got us into this inflationary mess. So there's good, there's bad, there's pretty ugly. Now we get to the NFA items, and all the conflict here is the Bird Rule. The Bird Rule is meant to keep non-budget items out of budget bills, despite every budget bill in my memory being a pork barrel monstrosity of crap that doesn't belong there. Doesn't make it right, but it is, unfortunately, business as usual. Under the Bird Rule, anything policy-related is supposed to be removed unless it can get 60 votes to overcome objections, which is why the parliamentarian responsible for making sure the bill complies with that rule, standing up and saying the provision to remove the tax stamp, tax, and registration requirements for silencers, SBRs, etc. doesn't pass the rule is pretty ironic. But that is what happened, and with a 53-47 GOP majority, chances are not great. So, John Cornyn of Texas said, okay, let's go back to the version that was floated before that got gun owners so pissed off, where it zeroes out the tax stamp but keeps them as NFA items that need to be registered. According to Cornyn, the GOP knew this would be a problem all along and put the blame on gun rights groups for overpromising things that weren't possible under congressional rules. Whether or not this is true, I don't know. That is what he's saying. He could just be trying to cover his own butt. Either way, that language has now been added and is supposed to be getting a vote sometime today. Now, there's some other things at play. Parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough is not an elected official. She's only the 6th parliamentarian since the position was created in 1935. It's a position that you pretty much never hear about until something like this happens. So some people are arguing that she should be fired or overridden by Senate Majority Leader John Thune. That is not happening. Every time there is a budget bill, stuff gets taken out, despite all of the crap that gets left in, and every time someone demands the parliamentarian be fired. She has survived these calls to be fired in 2017 and 2021, and in the whole nearly 100 years of the position, only one has ever been fired, and people were pretty upset about it. Firing her would effectively change voting requirements for any budget bill going forward and would gut the filibuster, which truthfully are things we do not want, because remember folks, that would be used against us later. And the Senate is aware of that. It happened with the legislative filibuster before. Democrats killed it for lower court judges during Obama, so then the Republicans killed it for Supreme Court appointees under Trump. It is a very slippery slope. You can like that or not, but it is what it is. That is not the mechanism or vehicle for change here. GOA and other groups have called for the Senate to overrule her exclusion, but it looks like that isn't happening either. Folks have asked for J.D. Vance to step in. That's also looking unlikely. What is likely is that Democrats will object to this new language, and it'll have to go back in front of McDonough. According to the GOP, this newer language has a better chance of passing muster. It's still a better option than full tax stamps on everything, but admittedly, it is not great. But also, if it passes Bird, it would only need 50 votes instead of 60. which it looks like we could do. The kicking out and rewrites is part of the typical process. Do I agree with her decision? No, because a constitutional right should not be taxed or held under a fee, and removing a tax or fee is absolutely a budget item. The registration is basically a way to see who paid the tax, so without the tax there's no reason for the registry, especially when there isn't supposed to be a gun registry, and SBRs are absolutely firearms. It is a crappy consolation, but at least if the tax stamp is zeroed out and only the registration is left, that does provide a possible legal argument later to challenge the NFA in other ways. It's also worth noting, a lot of the GOP folks calling for McDonough to be kicked out are not doing it over NFA items. They're doing it over other provisions in the bill, and maybe if there is enough of those, it might happen. But simply put, the NFA stuff is not their priority. Meanwhile, it is at least kind of funny to see anti-gun groups argue that removing the tax would gut the NFA, then saying, oh wait, no, actually it's removing the registration piece that would gut the NFA, and now going back to saying, oh guys, we were right the first time, it's actually the tax that would gut the NFA. Talk about moving the goalposts. All right, so that is a speed run of all of the information up to this point. I even managed to get it out before Liberty Toddler came in and tried to knock over my camera or my microphone, so I'm calling it a win. This video is already longer than I intended, but that is the basics of what's happening with the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act provisions in the reconciliation bill. All right, you guys know the drill for all of the algorithm things. Please do them. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there and happy shooting.